Hello, I'm responding to a question by EryxUK. That is that atheism and agnosticism in Pathfinder and D&D. I've come across this subject a couple times, different things, and I do think it's definitely possible. It really depends on the setting, in my mind. Like, in particular worlds, gods are more involved and are more apparent. But in a world where magic is real, it's not impossible that a person might become to believe that the gods aren't real. For example, since specifically mentioning Pathfinder, a little bit of a spoiler for anyone who hasn't read the NRC World Guide for Pathfinder, but one of the gods in it, Razmir, who runs Razmaran, isn't actually a god. He's, well, I'm sure it comes up in some of the other books, but Razmir is in fact a very powerful wizard. Extremely powerful. I'm guessing he's bordering on epic level, if not there, so to speak, although I don't think in Pathfinder you generally have an epic level, but you're talking about an extremely powerful wizard who is tricking people and conning them into believing he's a god. So I could certainly see in that setting, if someone who is a follower of him somehow were to realise that he wasn't in fact a god, and that he was tricking them, and that he'd successfully done this to an entire nation, that it's not entirely impossible, and it somehow survives. That's a critical point. They survive figuring out he's not a god, and believe he's not a god. It's not impossible that they wouldn't theorize that all the other gods are potentially similar hoaxes, that they're just incredibly powerful individuals who have tricked people. And in the settings with that much magic, it's not impossible that they have attained or already always had certain qualities, like Aridin, one of the chief gods who has died. He was one of the last Aslanti of a line of particularly powerful humans, so it was like maybe he was also conning people and tricking them. So that's possible, although it'd be a bit of an unusual way to go. As I said, it depends on the setting in my mind. I have dealt with it in games. For example, I did say in one of the comments I had typed already, a friend of mine played a cleric of atheism in Eberron. And in Eberron it makes sense because the cosmology is extremely unusual in Eberron. You can be a cleric of an evil god, you can be a cleric of a good god, and you can be evil yourself, and it has no issues with you casting spells. And it in that setting it made sense, and he was going for a certain belief, and the GM said, hey, okay, fair enough, you don't have to normally be a cleric of a god. Normally people in most settings wouldn't play a blind but a cleric of atheism there. Yeah, definitely I could see it happening, as well as agnostics in Eberron. It could happen. I'm not saying they're going to be terribly common, but I could definitely see it happening. As well as this, I have... One time it was a big team I put into one of my games, where the bad guys, effectively, were a group that were invading. The players didn't realize what these guys were invading for originally. They seemed to be invading from the east, and the campaign built up to a certain point. They're like, oh, they finally realize there's the invasion coming. These different guys. They don't know why these guys are invading. First, the orcs are invading just because they've conquered the orc lands, and some of the orcs are fleeing ahead of them, and they're attacking in terror the more civilized lands that the player character races. They're saying their lands are, because they're more civil ones, and the orcs are desperately trying to overcome their defenses, as the game was set in an area that was cut off, and there was one large pass out that you can only really get out, which a human city was built on and become quite rich because of taxation. A Hexterite city, a lawful neutral in alignment city of itself, but they were Hexterites. And that was pretty cool when the players actually found out why these guys, where they were coming from, that they were claimed to be, at least, that they were from many different planes, and that this crusade they referred to it as the Eternal Crusade. They went from plane to plane, and they would, with their vast numbers and some of the knowledge they had gained and huge armies, they would hunt down effective. I know it's a bit mad, but in the context of this campaign I was going for it, that it was a truly vast army with many epic level characters effectively as part of it, and this army was united in that the gods, even if they did create people, which these guys were not convinced of. They thought these were just beings that were trying to trick everyone. Even if they had created everyone, that these gods were in fact people that were that these beings, even if they had created everyone, were trying to trick mortals as well as other even immortal beings, not gods. They were trying to trick them into worshipping them and to keep them occupied, to prevent people from realizing this, that the gods were in fact orchestrating the disputes between Hextor and Heronius. They were staging these so that they would keep the mortals occupied and have them die for them, and perhaps having their souls sacrificed towards these people. And that the gods were in fact these very evil beings. And this was the Eternal Crusades opinion. It started a long time ago. I have to admit, I got the initial idea from something a friend in his campaign. I asked him, I was like, hey, can I take this on, go on further with the idea of this particular group who are agnostics? And he said, yeah, go nuts. Well, they weren't agnostics, they just didn't like the gods. I thought, no, why the hell should we have to listen to the gods? Screw that. So in this particular context, in that game, that was a big premise of it. And it actually was pretty cool and quite rewarding to see some of the players going, hey, some of the players, one of the players was actually ready to betray the party because his god had been killed already, but these guys were still like, look, we don't like doing this. Once we've, as far as these guys were concerned, it was like they were going to cleanse this plane, slowly kill off the gods, and once they've dealt with that, they would turn around to people like, if you want us gone, we will leave. We are not here to conquer your land. However, many people would then potentially turn around, and they'd already seen people from the world turning around and joining these guys because they seemed so powerful, and they had in fact managed to already killed a demigod and a lesser god, which was terrifying people, including the players. The gods, of course, were terrified of this as well, and part of the premise of this was the gods granted these gifts on some of their loyal mighty warriors. The PCs, I gave them some pretty funky templates to make them really scary, just go for a really powerful thing without necessarily being level 20. The characters only around level 10, but I was giving them some custom templates, and each of them a bit unique, which was pretty cool. I think the players really appreciated it. But some of the players even were kind of looking at them going, if they just restricted to the evil gods, I'd be okay with it, but they're planning on killing all the gods, and I know some of the gods are, or the players believe some of the gods are quite nice, and the bad guys firmly believed, and the bad guys weren't evil. That was the point. They firmly believed that they were helping the player characters. And that particular campaign, it made sense. Wouldn't make sense in every campaign, but in that campaign it was kind of part of the entire premise once we eventually got to it after many, many sessions. So in my opinion, it depends on the setting. Like I said, everyone's an easy one for an agnostic or even an atheist. But other ones, Forgotten Realms, I wouldn't see it necessarily being quite as likely. I can definitely see there's going to be a few of them on the different planes, as well as there might be some people who just naturally believe in shamanistic things. They might point towards, well, a genie can do these powerful things, so some people might worship a genie as a god. Some people might kind of rationalize, this is a very powerful being. I don't actually believe that it created everything. However, for some reason, we can have some kind of mutual relationship where if the god might actually grant them spells, that they might actually have some kind of relationship. It depends on the setting in my mind. But that's my own thoughts on it and my own experiences with agnosticism and atheism in D&D. So you can disagree with me, especially on some of the stuff, but I actually find it very interesting in D&D where gods are so apparent. And something I've talked about with friends before, that in some settings it is, as a friend of mine says, like, but no, you know the gods are doing things, people are getting spells from the gods. You have to be an idiot not to believe in the gods in the setting. But then again, you can say, well, maybe clerics are just tricking you. It's not like there's never been any evil churches in any of the D&D games who've ever tried to manipulate anyone, even though they're clerics of good gods or different things. It's an extension of that. I don't think it's a common thing, but I believe it can definitely work in a game. It can be an interesting element, or you can go with a player character. That said, it would be a very unusual and potentially quite foolish player character. So that's my thoughts. Okay.